So I finally picked up a physical copy of one of my absolute favorite anime from recent years, Bocchi the Rock. And arigato to Crunchyroll for actually making such a thing available in the US. It is by no means a guarantee these days. There's still no US physical release of even Chainsaw Man, for example, which also aired alongside Bocchi nearly 2 years ago now. However, the first thing I noticed when taking a look at the flip side of this otherwise wonderful cover art was the phrase, "Even introverts can shine." Now I have, as I'm sure you have, seen thousands of otherwise respectable members of the human species making similar such comments about Bocchi online. Here's the problem. Bocchi is not an introvert. Even if we just take this common claim for granted and assume that she is, it's certainly not her defining characteristic when it comes to her, let's just say for now, existence as a social entity, or her defining characteristic among her social competencies and social ills. That defining characteristic belongs to Ryo. Ryo is unambiguously an introvert. Bocchi has crippling social anxiety. And in case it needs to be said, these two things are not the same. Let me assure you, just so we're clear, that this is not just another one of my crackpot analysis theories. This is made not only implicit in the subtext and more subtle characterization, but also all but explicitly clear in the text of the show itself. You know, the scene where Bocchi explicitly states her realization of the clear difference between herself and Ryo as this wonderful visual metaphor plays out. Her words are as follows. "Ryo-san is just like me. On days off, she does urban exploration and visits secondhand clothing shops. No, she's not. Ryo-san likes being alone. Someone with social anxiety could never enter a clothing shop on her own. The gap between the lonely and the loner is too deep and vast to ever be traversed." Truly wise words from everyone's favorite puddle on the ground. Keep in mind that she's referring to the same Ryo who says in episode 1 that Nijika is her only friend, and she's never characterized as being discontented by this. There's also the name Hitoribochi, which comes from the word, well, Hitoribochi, meaning solitude, aloneness, or loneliness. The one point of evidence that might actually point to Bocchi's sense of introversion versus extroversion would be how her energy levels seem to be affected by social interaction, such as in, I think, episode 9, where she says that she wouldn't be capable of hanging out with Kita every day, or more importantly, her characterization in the episode 1 scene where she suddenly disappears on Nijika and Ryo at the thought of an after-show celebration, insinuating that much like an actual introvert, people actually drain her of energy, whereas extroverts receive energy from being around other people. It is of course important to keep in mind that this is somewhat of a spectrum. Anyway, the aforementioned episode 1 Bocchi quote is as follows. "Actually, I'm pretty exhausted from all this social interaction, so I'm gonna go." So relatable it hurts. Then again, literally 20 seconds after that quote, her proclamation is that she's going to get over her social anxiety, not a mention of introversion to be seen. Unfortunately, the folks marketing the show at Crunchyroll either aren't interested in or aren't capable of making this blatantly obvious distinction. This meme is not only reflected on the box art, but also on the watch page on Crunchyroll's website, which shows up to directly refer to Bocchi as an introvert right before you watch the show. Perhaps they didn't watch the show. Now obviously this isn't an issue unique to Crunchyroll, but let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. I find this misunderstanding particularly sad because a huge part of the appeal of the show, a huge part of why it feels so real despite being so funny, one of the most interesting things about how this series comically but meaningfully tackles the subjects of personality types, social competencies versus social ills, how this all affects social dynamics and even one-off interactions, etc., is the range and variety of very specific personality types as well as general levels of emotional intelligence represented by all these different characters. You could easily divide the band itself into heteronormative and otherwise, your normies and your freaks, so to speak. But then beyond that, Kita is a full-on natural social butterfly, while Nijika is basically just socially functional, a perfectly normal, acceptable, albeit quirky member of society, as close to an everyman as a cute anime girl in a show that's actually good could probably be. On the other side, Bocchi has an impossible time making social connections that she desperately does want to make, while Ryo, for the most part, could not care less as long as she has a new bass to noodle on, a fancy new distortion pedal to experiment with, and just enough sustenance to sustain her own life. And that's just the core cast. Therefore, there exists a broad, vibrant, and well-defined spectrum, or perhaps more accurately multi-axis chart of characters representing various personality types, levels of social intelligence and social standing or competency, and even specific quote-unquote social hang-ups when compared to all those
fucking normies!
You could probably map these out by some combination of, let's just say, emotional intelligence, interest in people versus things, social standing or confidence, introversion versus extroversion, and maybe throw in libertarian versus authoritarian just for the lulz. Or maybe we could just map them all out with the big 5 personality traits. Starting at the left, we have Bocchi being socially anxious, Rio being a bona fide introvert, Nijika being a perfectly middle-of-the-road heteronormative goddess, and Kita being the ultimate social butterfly. I'm sure you can imagine where characters like Kikuri or the boss lady might fit somewhere in the spectrum or graph as well. Now, someone who's not me should take the time to develop such a chart and map them out. Just do it right. No, look, I totally understand that there is a real and fairly obvious reason that this sort of thing happens. I've seen all the memes floating around the internet, I've seen all the videos praising the show because, oh my god, I relate to Bocchi so hard because she's so introverted. She just like me for real. Like for real for real. I understand what's happening. This is an issue of the sort of meta context around the show affecting its broader perception, becoming such a widely accepted meme that even the official publishers market it as such, because it resonates broadly and it's familiar to the audience and probably the target demographic as well, and all that blah 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 that I have no time to get tangled up in.
You still haven't explained why any of this is even a problem. I mean, free-range meat is just marketing bollocks too, so who cares?
I just really wish that people would work ever so slightly harder to accurately sell and represent the most basic and obvious appeals of shows when they're marketing or trying to sell people on them. And that doesn't just go to Crunchyroll, it goes to all my fellow anime-related creators as well. I'm sure I've messed this up before too, but like, throwaway popcorn entertainment and shitposts alike, setting not just proper, but specific expectations is kind of like one of the core tenets of our job, right?
Come on, man. What are we talking about?
Also, don't get me wrong, point number 2. I appreciate the sentiment of relatability that drives this meme. I feel the Bocchi just like me for real deep in my veins. I used to be a guitarist in high school trying to start a band even though I had 0 social intelligence. I still have close to 0 social intelligence, but I did end up starting a few bands over the years. And just let me say, as someone with many experiences in a very similar situation, that this show is deeply relatable for me on multiple levels, all the way down to the freaking musician-specific humor, which I'd really love to talk about in more depth one day. But ultimately, I relate to Rio much more than Bocchi on a personality level, because Rio is an actual, bona fide introvert. Like her, I don't actually have that much trouble talking to people as a quote-unquote adult. I'd just rather be playing with new guitar effect pedals and or watching anime like, I don't know, 99 times out of 100? And that is not Bocchi. She wants to be out and about with friends. She wants a fulfilling social life and people who look up to her as fans. Ultimately, Bocchi is not an introvert, or at least if she is, she certainly isn't aware of it yet. She still desperately wants to make lots of friends and broader social connections. She still desperately wants to be accepted by people, quite broadly speaking. Bocchi by no means dislikes people, by no means likes being alone, as Rio does. She doesn't love music in spite of the social connections that come along with it. She got into music specifically because she saw the potential for social connections even for someone like her who isn't very good with people. And so you see in the show that Bocchi uploads covers of popular songs to her YouTube channel because she wants people to like her and what she does. Rio, on the other hand, loves playing niche music that she knows not many people will be interested in because she likes it, because she is a hashtag punk rock hipster. Bocchi wants to have more friends and wants fans to look up to her. Rio wants more money to buy more bass guitars and fancy distortion pedals. Bocchi desperately wants to understand how to properly communicate with other people, but holes herself up in cardboard boxes and trash cans because she's scared of them. Rio enjoys teasing people and showing off on her bass, but she likes her circle small and more than likely has no real interest in your cats, dogs, nieces, nephews, uncles, work, church, news, politics, or the weather. Or maybe I'm just projecting. Bocchi is willing to put in exorbitant and cartoonish levels of effort to try to understand how to be conventionally cool. Rio only puts in full effort when she wants to be Rio's version of cool. And so when Bocchi is doubting her lyrics, it's Rio who assures her confidently that even if those lyrics don't reach everybody, those they do reach, they will resonate deeply within. Because Rio is a confident introvert who knows who she is and knows the limits of her interest in other people, while Bocchi, love her to death, relate to her hard, desperately wants to form all sorts of new social connections. She just has a bit of crippling social anxiety and a lack of experience and social intelligence to get past first. But what do you think? Am I right? Or am I missing something crucial here? Is Bocchi's characterization as being much closer to extroverted than Rio simply the result of her being alone for all those years? Is her social exhaustion and disappearance on Rio and Nijika in episode 1, and her admittance that she wouldn't be able to hang out with someone like Kita every day, proof otherwise? Am I the idiot after all? Let me know in the comments below, and I hope that you enjoyed the video either way. Peace.
I don't roll with you if you ain't watching Bocchi. I don't roll with you if you ain't watching Bocchi. I ain't rolling with the boys in blue or the old crew. If you don't know about the pink and blue, but it's showing anime fall 22. My new best friend and a mentor too.